Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome to our session on social entrepreneurship this morning here. My name is Nick Brozovic. I'm the Director of Policy at the Water for Food Institute. It's my pleasure to moderate this session today. Social entrepreneurship is a term that means many things to many people. I think a very broad definition is applying business ideas and concepts to social goals. Today we're going to hear from three very diverse speakers that have been deeply involved with rural issues in Nebraska and trying to build up those communities. I'll start off by introducing the speakers. We'll give them about 10 minutes or so to speak each, and then we have some themes that we'll bring out, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So first of all today, our first speaker will be Brian D. Thompson. Brian, you can raise your hand there. Brian graduated from the University of Nebraska with a Bachelor's of Science in Agricultural Education. He's currently the Vice President of External Relations with Consolidated Companies, Inc., where he's worked for 21 years. He's also served the Nebraska Community Foundation as a board member for 9 years, including as chairman of the board for 2 years. He was born in Aurora, Nebraska, and moved to Dunning, Nebraska in 1979 to begin running the family ranch that was established in 1909. This operation is currently operated by his parents, brother, and sister. Brian has been married to Kelly for 18 years, and they have 4 children, Daniel, Brady, Aylin, and Grant. Our second speaker today will be Brent Nollette. Brent is the agricultural education instructor at Valentine Community Schools. After graduating from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, he took his first teaching job in Amherst, Nebraska, where he taught for 6 years before moving to Valentine, and there he's been for the last 2 years. He's also actively involved in his family ranch operation and spends time helping his family's vineyard and winery, Niobrara Valley Vineyards in Nensel, Nebraska. Our final speaker is Andrew Norman. Andrew is a 4th-generation Nebraskan who was born in Grant and raised in Imperial. He's the executive director of Here Nebraska, a nonprofit cultivating Nebraska music and arts through multimedia journalism. He's a graduate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Journalism School. He served as managing director of 2 Omaha news weeklies, Omaha City Weekly and The Reader, before earning his master's in environmental journalism at Michigan State University. Following this, he and his wife Angie created Here Nebraska in 2010. He lives with Angie and their son Towns in Omaha's Benson neighborhood. So thank you very much. I think we'll start with Brian today. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, my name is Brian Thompson. I work with Consolidated Companies. We're headquartered here in Nebraska. This company's been in our family since 1947, so we're well over 60 years in business here in Nebraska as a family. That's, kind of an interesting thing. I'm a 3rd generation. We have a few 4th generationers kind of working in our business now as family members, but we are a little different in the fact that we have been working with some consulting help over the years as a family business, and our Thompson family vision statement says that we're actually committed to investing in building rural Nebraska. And that's been in our vision statement as a family and as a business. And there probably aren't very many businesses in Nebraska who actually say that out loud and mean it with their family. So we also, we look at acquisitions and we invest in lots of different things as we go along. But our main business, our core business, has always been telecommunications. And we serve an area of about 9,000 square miles with broadband, voice, and video services out in central Nebraska. And we offer other things like underground construction and business and home networking and wireless networking, that type of thing for your home, as well as phone systems. And one of our biggest new group of customers are cell towers. They all seem to need a big piece of fiber underneath of them to supply broadband for everybody who's walking around with a cell phone. So we have new and different changing customers all the time. I was walking back here and we were talking about how agriculture needs a lot more broadband all the time, and it's been kind of a theme through this process. And We just did an upgrade in the Ashby area where we ended up having 8 new broadband customers after that upgrade, and one of them is the main server for the Mormon Church's Farmland Reserve up there. So they do a great deal of data work up there. Within our service territory, we have 24 communities, 14 high schools, and those high schools are all connected with broadband distance learning, either 50 or 100 megabit circuits. We have over 582 miles of 10 gigabit backbone that we serve the state with. And over the next 5 years, we're going to invest over 10 million, closer to $15 million in our network. And so I say all that to tell you that we're very much a business that is in business for profit, and we are also concerned about what's going on in our rural areas that we serve, and we want to have good customers there to serve in the future. And in about 2003, that was starting to look kind of scary. There were a lot of really doom and gloom stories going around, and if you'll recall, 2003, in central Nebraska, they'd been in a drought for most of 3 years at that point in time, and people and jobs seemed to be drying up with the drought. It was a rough time, and things like water for food and all those different things were really starting to kind of come to mind because it was a scary deal. Young people were leaving, particularly in the eyes of the other folks in the community, and I traveled through our communities and felt like we really needed to find a win for our communities, something that would give them hope. And if you were here for the hope presentation from the person from Gallup, that it all ties together very well. Anyway, so Consolidated partnered with the Nebraska Community Foundation, and this is a good time for me to say this. I brought annual reports of the Nebraska Community Foundation. They're up there at the top by the box on the top corner. You may want to pick one up. There's a great study in there about transfer of wealth in Nebraska over the next 10 years, and it's well worth reading. Very good stuff. Anyway, we partnered with those guys in 2003, knowing that we needed to have a win for our communities. We created challenge grants, and most of our communities were had no philanthropic organization, no foundation in their community, no ability to actually work as a community foundation. So when we partnered with Nebraska Community Foundation, we were able to set up funds in each of those communities with their help and work, and partner with them. And then they created what was called an affiliated fund, and then we said, well, hey, we're going to offer you a challenge grant for an endowment. Well, most of those folks were thought the word endowment was pretty foreign to them, and that was kind of a different language, and weren't really sure about what that meant. And we had to do some education and training and that type of thing, and round up leaders who were ready to kind of think about and work on that stuff at that time. And this was not a giant process financially, but it was something to kind of get things kicked off. And we would give them a $3,000 per year challenge grant for 5 years, or $15,000 total dollars, if they would go around to their community area and raise $6,000, 2-to-1 match. So at the end of this 5-year period, we would have $45,000 that they could use for grant making, the earnings on that money forever into the future. And once they figured out that they could make grants every year for the rest of time out of that money, they thought, yeah, that's a pretty neat little asset we could have in 5 years. So we started to work on that. I felt like that was a strict goal. Most of those community folks felt like $6,000 was way over the top. They hadn't been ever able to raise that in a bake sale and didn't know how they were going to do that. And it was a challenge. So they went out and did it, though. And so when we got down to it, we had challenged 6 communities to raise $45,000 over 5 years. They all made it. And the fact was, they all way made it over what they had ever dreamed they could. Thedford actually had $100,000 at the end of 5 years. And so it is really was a real success, and they outperformed even their goals and their dreams. But what's really neat is I went back and looked, and I said, well, what's the progress been? You know, we kind of started this nest egg a while back, 2003, and what do they have now? Well, at 2008, they had at least 45,000, but in most of our communities now, they're averaging well over that. And Arthur, with a population of 118 folks, and Arthur County has the fund that serves the whole county, they have $308,000. And in Thedford, Nebraska, their population 204, they also have $304,000 in their current endowment right now. When you put all 6 of our communities together, it's over $1.4 million of endowment and grant-making capacity they have each year. So we started with a little bit of money, and we have made something pretty cool for them now. And so I'll stop now, and you can ask me questions later.
Brian, thank you so much.
Yes.
So I guess we'll have all the speakers present, and then we'll have some questions for all of them. So we'll go with Brent next. Thank you.
Again, my name is Brent Nollette. I'm an ag education instructor at Valentine Community Schools. I grew up in Nensel, Nebraska, and for those of you that may not be aware of Nensel, Nebraska, you might have blinked when you drove by. My dad would always tell a story when he was at a conference, and they were talking about their hometowns, and he said, mine's about 8. And someone said, 8,000, that's not too bad. And someone else, and his dad said, no, 8. And someone else said, 800, and no, just 8, there's no zeros. Just 8 people, so pretty rural Nebraska. It is up to probably 20 now or something like that. But anyway, I grew up on a ranch there in Nensel, Nebraska, graduated high school from Cody Kilgore. Growing up, I just wanted to ranch. That was my goal. I wanted to graduate high school, go on to college, and then come home and ranch. And soon realized that probably wasn't the most feasible option. It was already had 2 families on the ranch. My uncle, which also was an ag education instructor. My dad was on there too, and he's an ag education instructor, and my mom is a guidance counselor, business teacher. So there was already 2 families there, and they all had outside jobs, and I soon realized that probably wasn't going to be an option for me just to go home and ranch. And so I went on to school and, to be an ag education instructor. Soon realized that I really enjoyed working with kids, but at the same time I wanted to be involved with production agriculture, and that was a job that was going to allow me to do both. So after graduating from college, took my first job in Amherst, and then had the opportunity to move home, or close to home, in Valentine now. And I guess entrepreneurship is something that I work with in the classroom a little bit. The ag education model, for those of you that have seen that, it's a 3-part model, a 3-circle model in ag education. We have the classroom laboratory, things that are taught inside the classroom. We have the FFA things that students have the opportunity to compete and learn about outside the classroom. And the last component is called the Supervised Agriculture Experience Program. And that can be someone working at a job, or it's entrepreneurship as well. That's one component of it. And so working with entrepreneurship all the time, trying to get students to look at that aspect of it, and show maybe the different ways that they can be an entrepreneur. I think that a lot of students think of entrepreneurship when you're in Valentine, you have to own cows. And I think that's across the state that when you think of entrepreneurship and production agriculture, it's cows, sows, and plows. And that's not the case anymore. There's so much agribusiness. Agriculture is growing at all-time highs as far as production. but there are fewer and fewer people involved in production agriculture, and it's all the agribusiness that happens to support those production agriculturists and the research that goes into that that's important as well. And so talking about kids with that entrepreneurship side of things and how to get involved with that. So teaching entrepreneurship in the classroom, I do quite a bit of. And at the same time, like I said, I grew up on a ranch, so my family is also full of entrepreneurs. We have the ranch at home, where we raise registered Angus and Gelbvieh cattle. It's relatively small for that area. My parents also have a catering business. Again, they are full-time teachers, but during the summertime, they spend a lot of time catering around the area, and that kind of happened by accident, maybe. They got asked to help with a meal one time, and it's kind of just taken off from there. It's pretty unique in that they have not done any advertising. It's all been by word of mouth, and this last summer, they were very, very, very busy with that. And then along with that, too, my family recently started Niobrara Valley Vineyards. It's we're about 4 years into production of actually producing and selling wine. The unique thing with that is everything is right at the ranch. The headquarters of the ranch, it has where all the wine is made. The grapes are grown there on the ranch. So that's kind of been a learning curve too, getting everyone. My dad and my uncle knew how to raise cows and how to manage grass, and it's a lot different than raising grapes. And so that's kind of been a fun aspect of it. Learning, again, they're both teachers, or we're teachers. My uncle is retired now, but it's always learning, and but that's kind of some of the aspects that I've been involved with entrepreneurship when I'm not at work. So,
Brent, thank you. And finally, Andrew.
Hi, so Andrew Norman, Executive Director and co-founder of Here, Nebraska. I grew up in Imperial, and when I was growing up, I think like a lot of kids in Nebraska, I felt like I had to leave in order to, be part of culture that was interesting to me, or to do something cool, because I just felt, I think Nebraska has we're very self-deprecating, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. And so as growing up, I didn't see that there were opportunities for me in Nebraska. So I always felt like I had to leave. And as a music lover, I also really didn't know that there was great Nebraska music, original music happening in the state. Specifically Omaha and Lincoln, when I'm on the far western side, without really the internet growing up, I didn't know about it. There's no way to hear about it, and there weren't concerts in my hometown except for the Chase County Fair, which is great, but it's bringing in national musicians and not necessarily the style all the time that I love. Though I saw Charlie Daniels once, and that was cool. And so I'll fast forward to having gone to Michigan State to get my master's in environmental journalism. And I lived in DC for a while too during an internship. And my wife and I would tell people we were from Nebraska, and it was met as if it was a punchline to a joke. Nebraska doesn't enjoy a wonderful pop cultural image. We knew and really found out when we left. And we didn't plan on moving back, just thought I'd end up on one of the coasts. But in telling people we were from Nebraska and feeling like we had to defend it, we just became fiercely loyal to the state and really learned to appreciate what makes it so unique. I think sometimes you need to get away from somewhere to gain that perspective and realize, man, there's so much going on that I was missing out on or not taking advantage of. I just really missed the state. And we tell people like, oh, you don't know Nebraska. You don't know, like, there's amazing music and arts and theater and breweries and wineries like popping up. There's cool stuff for young people to do. And that story doesn't get told. I don't think, as a state, we do a very good job of kind of evolving the narrative. And so we created Here in Nebraska in part to change that narrative and evolve Nebraska's image into something much more cool and I think representative of what actually exists. And things that are attractive to young people. Nebraska has a brain drain. In 2011 and 2012 alone, we lost 2,000 college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds. The exodus of 18 to 34-year-olds is much more pronounced when you look at greater Nebraska as opposed to Omaha and Lincoln. But as a state, we're losing young people, and they're starting businesses and families elsewhere. We need to keep them. I think we all know this. And so one project, I should say, Here Nebraska focuses on multimedia journalism. So if you go to herenebraska.org on your phone or laptop, you can see kind of the stuff we do. At the top of the page, you should click on HN Radio. Down will drop a music playlist. We create a fresh all Nebraska music playlist every Monday. It's a really great way to discover your favorite Nebraska band. And I think, going back to having listened to really bad pop music on the coast, because I didn't know that good music happened in my state. I think Nebraskans are a very loyal bunch. We cheer for the Huskers no matter what. And I think that if more Nebraskans knew about the kind of music that exists, no matter what genre you're into, I think that they would really embrace that. It's in your own backyard. So we do journalism at our website, and we also do produce a lot of events. And so at 5 years, we've increasingly built ourselves as a kind of a event production company, sort of, as a nonprofit. And so we've partnered with Lincoln Chamber of Commerce and Omaha Chamber of Commerce to produce Here Lincoln and Here Omaha, respectively, 10-week summer concert series. And this year we're working with Grand Island to do the same. But we've never really been able to, until recently, expand our programming outside of Omaha and Lincoln. We just didn't have the resources or skills or expertise and experience. And so finally, 4 years in, last year, we produced this project called the Good Living Tour. And a few of the goals were to really celebrate the livelihood that is made possible by small towns, and for us, discover really great artists and people who support the arts in these towns. We wanted to build a more connected music community statewide. So, and the other thing is, every day, national bands, world-renowned national bands, drive right past every one of our towns on the way from Denver to Omaha and Lincoln, or Kansas City, or up to Chicago. And we can keep them here if we could establish some viable tour stops in central Nebraska. And so we're hoping that something like that can occur as well. So what we did was the Good Living Tour is one part storytelling, one part concert. So the storytelling portion, in June, we took a team of journalists and we produced feature stories on Nebraska music-related subjects. So we did like a feature story on the Norden Dance Hall near Valentine, this 85-year-old structure where the community congregates for line dancing and bands. And we were able to be there for one, and it was so much fun. And then stories like a youth pastor in Ogallala who was a national touring musician who got into heroin, and he was really hitting rock bottom, and he moved back to Ogallala, became a youth pastor, and now he's teaching music to kids in that community. Just awesome stories that we wouldn't have been able to do had this project not happened. So those are the feature stories. And then we also interviewed young people on video and asked them in each town, why do you live in West Point? Or Grand Island, or Imperial, or Ogallala, or North Platte, Scotts Bluff, Nebraska City. Like, what keeps you here? What got you to come back? And what might make others who are considering moving back to your town do it? Like, what beyond, well, I had family here and it was easy. Like, what else makes living there really, truly unique? And so if you go to YouTube, we have a Here Nebraska channel, and we produce these videos called Experience Nebraska, and then the town name. Check them out. They're great. They're short, 2 minutes. And so we produce those videos. And then in each of these 9 towns, over 9 consecutive days, we produced a concert series, free, all ages concerts. We only focus on original contemporary music. We feel like traditional music has, there's funding opportunities, and cover bands don't need our help. So we took 27 total really great Nebraska bands, ranging from hip hop to honky tonk, to these towns, 3 bands on each bill over the course of nine nights. And the bills were created as follows. So we had one very kind of accessible band, like maybe blues or like folk or country. One band that was had a local member, so maybe a band based out of Omaha or Lincoln that features members from like Valentine or Scotts Bluff, or a local band specifically. And then the third band was a wild card. We put hip hop in Scotts Bluff and North Platte, pop punk in Nebraska City, and indie rock in Ogallala and Imperial, and we mixed these in. So there was something for everybody, ideally, but nobody was probably going to love every single band, and that's okay. We challenged them purposefully. And so at the concert, the day of, I should say, on our website, which reaches 27,000 people a month, 30% outside the state, 6% international, we featured those stories. So the night of the Ogallala concert, for instance, it was sort of like a takeover on our website of the feature stories we produced. We also made those available for any local Nebraska paper to run, free of charge, of course. And the videos we projected on this giant screen before the headlining show. And what was really cool about that is we built those videos as sort of like tourism, kind of like a marketing piece for the town. We envision them reaching an external audience to help them attract and retain young people. But what we realized, or what I realized watching these shows, these videos with the town folk, is that they're wonderful rallying cries for the community. And I think in small towns, having lived in one, I know you can get this kind of, you can start getting negative on your town and feel like just not celebrating what exists and just seeing the negative. And I think what was cool about that was that it allowed people to kind of like drop their guard and say, hell yeah, we have a really great town, this is cool, and I want to tell that story. And I think that in order to stop the brain drain and keep young people in these towns, we need to get the young people that live there to buy in and to help tell the story and recruit their friends to move back. So the concert series went wonderfully. This year, we're aiming to bump it to 13 different towns and expand it. And favorite thing that I've ever been a part of. It was wonderfully fulfilling.
Thank you very much. So before I throw the floor open for questions, there are a few things that I'd like to mention as take-home messages. We spent some time preparing for the panel, talking on the phone and by email, and thinking about what are some of the most important themes that come out of these very diverse endeavors. And I'd suggest that there are two things there that really came out. The first is that you really have to get young people involved. And one way to think about that is that for rural communities to thrive, the young people have to believe in the future of the community. And so I'll start off by asking each of our panelists, what are the most important things in your own programs and your own experiences that help to get young people involved?
I guess I can start there. I guess just being in the high school setting and the ag education instructor around students every day. So, but probably the toughest thing is I always have people call and ask, hey, do you have 4 or 5 kids that maybe would be able to help out with this event on Saturday? Could you help us set up this for this event or whatever it may be? And so I ask the kids, and probably the biggest challenge is, well, they ask, well, what's in it for me? And when I was in high school, maybe it's because my dad and my mom were right there, but you just did it. And there wasn't any questions asked, and it seems like there's more and more questions that are being asked on, well, what's the benefit for me? And so that's been a challenge, and trying to convince the students that the community does a lot for you, and in order for the community to thrive and to survive, you're going to have, we need to get more young involved. So this year I was trying to come up with some type of ideas of something to do. I kind of started a little point system in FFA with all of the focusing on different aspects, and they get points for several different things that they do and different incentives behind it. But I put a lot of emphasis on community involvement and community service activities, and that's worth the most out of anything, to try to get kids involved. And it has worked really, really well. I don't know what's changed. I guess that little T-shirt or that I offer for the one that has the most points, or different incentives at different points of the year, it's really working. To give an example, last year I didn't have anything like this installed, And we do an after-school program a couple, 3 times during the year with elementary school students, just kind of talking about the beef industry, some things like that. And I was like pulling teeth to try to get kids to come to that after school. This year, I've had more kids there than I knew what to do with. And they wanted to be there, and they kept talking about how many points they're going to get because they want their team to win at the end of the year so they could get a steak supper at my house. But whatever it takes. But the point is that they want to know what's going to be out of it for them, and they may not know that value of giving back until 5-10 years after school, and realizing that those are pretty important moments. Or having kids volunteer for the Sand Hills Area Foundation here just this last week. They had an event where they raise funds for their annual scholarships that they do give out, and I don't think kids realize that scholarship, that maybe they were going to get that scholarships or potentially, but they also afterwards, I think they're going to realize that some of those people that were probably on the committees and the scholarship selection process were probably there helping that day too, and they notice on those types of things. Maybe that could be something that maybe they would see, but I guess that's probably been the biggest challenge, is just getting the kids to want to, seeing the value of giving back to the communities. And as we've said, the rural communities' average age isn't getting any younger, unfortunately, and so we need these younger students to realize the importance that they need to be involved in their rural communities.
So the youth are critical to here Nebraska succeeding. In order to make Nebraska an internationally known cultural destination, which is our vision, not necessarily our mission, we need the youth to embrace music and arts and go out to shows and hopefully host a show or pick up an instrument, support record stores and music industry businesses. And so as part of the Good Living Tour, we reached out to every high school in the surrounding area around each of the 9 towns to try to enlist essentially street teamers to help learn how to promote a concert, to work with us directly on doing that, and help us promote the concert to their people, using the channels and languages that they use best and know how to use better than we do. We had mixed success with that last year. I think that we didn't have enough time initially, and I think because Good Living Tour was brand new, we'd reach out to administration and journalism teachers, and I think they probably thought, like, who are these people and why are they trying to talk to our kids, So hopefully we'll have more success this next year. But at the concerts, it was so cool seeing kids, like young kids, standing right up front watching these musicians perform. And we worked really hard to make sure that every bill was very diverse, in terms of race and gender. There were female musicians on every single stage, which I think is really critical, that young girls who go to these shows can see someone just absolutely rocking out, like a woman, just like her, And I think that was really neat. We told people from the stage, like, kids, if you'd like to meet the musicians afterward, come talk to them. They want to talk to you, and that happened, and that was super cool. As Here Nebraska grows, we're really working in the next couple of years to build an education component. So teaching Nebraskans about their Nebraska music history. We're producing a project called the Nebraska Vinyl Archive that is going to scan and document every single Nebraska vinyl record going back to 1921 and make that accessible to the public. I think this sense of Nebraska music history is really interesting and important, and these kids need to know it, as well as building music training classes, essentially after-school programs for kids who lack access, whether because of financial reasons or geography. So those are a few things we're working on.
I have a couple of youth stories. One of the better ones, Eustis is one of the communities that we've worked in for our challenge grants, and they've done a spectacular job, and they actually created a youth board or a youth committee for their local foundation fund. They had to go out and raise money for the renovation of their high school football field, which was something they were all very passionate about. And they had to go out and actually make the asks and do those kinds of things. And then they were also given a budget from the Foundation Fund Board at Eustis of the adults gave the youth a budget in which they needed to prioritize and make grants. It's pretty empowering when you have 15, 16, 17-year-old students prioritizing what's important about their community and what they need to do to make grants to make those things better for the rest of the community. So that's one of the best youth processes. Another one, many of the communities have celebrations around their foundation goals for the year, and they employ basically the youth to help with childcare and serving the food and those kind of things. And so then they get to actually watch what happens as the community comes together and has a really successful event, when the event is all about investing in the community. So it models of a behavior of really neat giving and giving back and investment. So those are two ways that are kind of tying youth together. And we have a lot more examples across the state. Those are just a couple that I can think of.
Thank you. The second theme that really came out in all the presentations is the importance of strong partnerships in allowing you to really make your programs effective. And this idea that partnerships, you learn from the experience of partners, and partners allow you to scale your programs. Perhaps again, you could speak a little bit about your own experiences with partnerships and how you go about choosing partners in particular.
Want me to start this time? Okay. I'll start on that one. We partnered with the Nebraska Community Foundation because they had a kind of a history. We'd been working with them for a while on a couple of different things. They, even at that time, were kind of new in what they were doing, but they already had some good systems built. They already had good best practices that they'd been working on. And they had access to professionals who had been doing some training and visioning for communities to help them look at what the future might hold in very rural places that had a lot of doom and gloom in kind of in their psyche. And it was really nice to have those great support mechanisms already built. We had the right professionals that we could access, and the other thing that Nebraska Community Foundation has really always been good at is doing the accounting. So a lot of these communities don't have the access to the types of professionals that they need. So if they're an affiliated fund of the Nebraska Community Foundation, they can utilize their accounting staff and back office to make sure all of the things get done for a nonprofit, which is huge for a town the size of Eustis.
So we absolutely needed partners in order to make the Good Living Tour work. I think it's an unprecedented project that I think definitely is a little outside the box. And so we were very fortunate to enlist some statewide sponsors, partners, Pinnacle Bank, which we approached because they have the most greater Nebraska banks, and they're really working to support local communities. Center for Rural Affairs as well is working in each of these communities, and I think really fits the story of the Good Living Tour, which is supporting local. And as well as Nebraska Arts Council and Humanities Nebraska. Each community also invested to make the Good Living Tour happen in their town. And it was, I think, a relatively significant investment. It was $4,500 per town for all the feature stories, the marketing video, the concert. And we paid bands really, really well. Artists have a really hard time making a living. And so here Nebraska is really working hard to make sure that we're investing in these artists and keeping them here in the state. From a community standpoint, we found essentially champions in each town who kind of helped us fundraise. And that ended up working through different kind of combinations of local funders. Community foundations were huge, as well as CVBs, the convention visitor bureaus in these towns, Department of Economic Development in some cases, as well as local businesses. So we were just interested in working with businesses that kind of support the same idea and are keeping jobs here. And so in 2016, we're looking for the same kind of partners, partners that we can be proud being associated with. We've never enlisted sponsors for anything we've ever done, so we weren't going to go out and just kind of take money from anybody who'd give it to us.
I guess at the high school and FFA, we partner with we have Valentine FFA alumni that's been very, very supportive in all that we do, whether that's mentorship, helping with events, giving ideas, providing funds, whatever we would need, and just the community in general. And when the FFA program, when the ag industry is doing so well, and particularly in Valentine with the beef market that's been so well the last few years, there's been a lot of money that has came towards the FFA to do whatever we would like to do, to provide opportunities for the kids. Rarely have I ever had to ask for any of that. You just mentioned some of your ideas of things that are going on, and all of a sudden, just the other night we had our alumni meeting, and I mentioned some of the incentives, and all of a sudden, just members there saying that, hey, I'll do this, I'll do that. So the support has been there, and just the community support in general across the board for what we want to do have helped provide the opportunities for the kids. For instance, we are taking, I don't know what I'm thinking, but I'm taking 22 students this next week to the National FFA Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. 22 high schoolers, and there's going to be another school's going with us. There will be about 50 kids that we're taking to Louisville, Kentucky this next week and be gone for about 6 days. And the kids had to pay $100, and that costs considerably more than that. That just kind of shows the support that the community has, and the value that they see in programs, and providing those career opportunities, maybe broadening their horizons. Some of the kids that have been in Nebraska and South Dakota, maybe it's some other adjacent states, and we're only 10 miles from South Dakota border, so they have never been out of the adjacent states, so providing those career opportunities just to see what's out there, the support is immense, so I can't say enough there. And I think I can speak on that as far as ag education across the state, on the support that is there for our programs to do those types of things. It's pretty amazing. And then I guess just talking more personally and support and partners for some of our family endeavors. With the winery, again, as I mentioned, we're ranchers, raise cows and grass. Growing grapes is quite different, and so it did rely on some consulting from lots of different people across the state, the university, some of the other wineries and vineyards in the state, and asking about those types of things. And also, we had a great partner that's close as a neighbor, a close family friend, and George Johnson. And if anybody's heard of George Paul Vinegars, it makes gourmet wine vinegars out of Coney, Nebraska, and sells all across the Midwest and online. But he's kind of came in and really mentored on the winemaking aspect of it. So again, I think that just kind of shows small town communities too, that everyone's willing to help each other out to achieve the goals of each individual, for the betterment of their community, because they also know that if more people are coming out for that type of thing, there's other people they're not just going to come out to spend money in one place, and it ultimately ends up helping out the whole community. And so I think that's the partnerships and have been great and are very important.
Great. Well, thank you for those valuable perspectives. With that, I'd like to ask if there are any questions from the floor. And we have a microphone that is working its way towards you.
Brent, you mentioned the entrepreneurial experiences you're trying to make your students aware of or have them involved in beyond production agriculture. How are they responding, and are there some specific examples that you can cite that really relate to that supervised ag experience that are beyond the production agriculture phase?
I think it has been a challenge. In the area that I'm in, I'm gonna have those kids that are the ranch kids that are gonna come right off the. They're coming from the ranch and they know about cows, and that's what they want to do is know about cows and nothing else. But maybe some of that is some examples would be one of the students attending AI school, and maybe their agribusiness is starting an artificial insemination business on the side that correlates with the goals of their ranch, but they can still generate some income that's not directly from their livestock. I've had some students, I had a student in Amherst that had bees. She had bees, and sold honey, and that was her part of her SAE. I think you look at a lot of things now, and all of the ranches and landowners all across the state rely on tourism or wildlife or hunting from others, and I think that's probably one of the areas that is probably not touched on enough, that relying on that's an entrepreneurial business that is a side note of the ranching or farming operation, that having students that are guided hunters, trapping, and kind of the fur trading type stuff. That's some of the things that I've seen. I just had another one that I was going to mention too. In Valentine, the tourism is Valentine population doubles on weekends in the summertime. You can't find a hotel room, so there's lots of people that are coming to the area, and just lots of kids that are even working, or their family business is a tubing company that has tubes to go down the Niobrara River. So I guess some of the different aspects of that are all agriculture related. So.
Another question that'll go to Brent. Back in my FFA days, 50 plus years ago, our chapter furnished purebred hogs for us members to start a herd or cattle, and that worked well. I know there's chapters out there that have horticulture things. Getting back to the grape growing, as a member of the Ag Committee at the legislature, we're struggling with the grape industry and providing buffer space to protect that from the corn and other crops that are grown. Out there, I would assume you'd have very good isolation. I've lived in that area some, but to me that would be, to be able to get an industry like that going in the Sandhill area to grow a lot of grapes. It would help maybe a young farmer rancher to have another job. Is it feasible for, like your FFA chapter, to have a orchard, grape, that your students could work at and understand it and have an opportunity to come back? To me, that's a way to bring that next generation back to the farm. If you have any comments on that.
Yeah. I think there might be even a couple of chapters in the state that do something similar to that with grapes, but I think it definitely would be an opportunity. And I visited with some people in the grape industry, and they foresee that western Nebraska being where a lot of the grapes are raised in the next several years, just because of the climate differences. We don't have to rely on as many chemicals and things like that just to be applied just to take care of the health of the plant because of the low humidity. and grapes like the hot weather, but cool nights, and that's something that the Sand Hills in north central Nebraska does provide, is the hot temperatures and then cooler in the evenings, lower humidities, and the sandy soils. They want water, but not in abundance, and so that's something we do irrigate, but everything is going through. And then back to your comments on the things around and kind of have the bumper things. Right next to ours, after the fact, is across the fence from our vineyard, irrigation pivot went in, and we do have to have up no drift zone signs. Actually, this last year they had potatoes, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with potatoes, but they are spraying all the time for potatoes for diseases. Probably once a week they're out there with helicopters spraying, so that has been a challenge, and something that when everything was planted, it's almost been 15 years ago, that wasn't an issue, but because of the water availability and some of the water moratorium things that have went into place, that there's been more and more of that up. So I don't know if I answered your questions. Thank you. Yep.
I was wondering how you planted seeds to establish endowment, and have you seen any sort of multiplier effect? What I'm saying is, you obviously invested $15,000, and you were able to get some communities to raise $300. Have other communities caught the vision? Is that a seed that's being cross-pollinated, and other communities are seeing, hey, we might be able to do that also?
Absolutely. Actually, there are close to 100 communities in Nebraska that are probably building endowments now, right? And they that continues to grow along the way. A lot of the communities who have kind of that vision for the future, that really want to invest, are really started now, and they've partnered with folks like the Nebraska Community Foundation. There are other things in that levering that you were thinking about there. One of the neat things that's happened is, after we did our challenge grant with the community of Wallace, the bank in Wallace turned around and challenged Wallace again, so that they would build a kind of a second tier on that. And so that was another way that kind of worked out. I know that Eustis has had at least one small challenge as well along the way. There are communities now that have been working with, they've been doing a action planning process, and if they've completed the action planning process a while back now and have been working on those steps that they identified, they're eligible to work with the Sherwood Foundation for a grant, and so that's kind of a big deal. And some of those folks have been able to do $200,000, $250,000 challenge grants in the state. So there's a lot of it going on, and a lot of communities are really taking advantage of that. And one of them that always blows me away is Shickley, Nebraska. Shickley's gonna be able to, I think they're $5, $6, $7 million in their endowment already, and it's growing all the time. They've got several different plans for growth. I think they're hope to have 10 or 15 million in their endowment. So you think about what they can do, and it's almost everything they ever want to do.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we have time for one more quick question, if there is one.
On the music videos, or the videos that you did for those communities, what was and I pulled them up, but I didn't want to turn on the sound while you were speaking. What was the prime message that you included in all those, and about what length were they?
Yeah, they were about 2 minutes long each. And the message really came out of the community members we spoke with. But some themes that came out were that, there's a sense that of opportunity. A lot of people spoke about how, the things that they were doing, opening a coffee shop in North Platte that also hosted music or whatever it was, they could never do elsewhere. The lack of competition relatively was something that they spoke about that they loved, and that you can take some risks in that way. And that, I think, for me was one of the most compelling messages that I heard from these people. Of course, family, a great place to raise kids is super, super important and compelling as well. And so you heard that as well. I heard one thing that was kind of interesting in my hometown, Imperial. I don't know if they even have a bar now. Maybe they still do, but one closed. But people they just have each other over at their houses, and so maybe there's not this nightlife district or something, but there's these connections through friends, and you hang out at other people's houses, and I don't know, that was cool too, and something really unique to small towns.
Thank you. Well, I think we're at the end of our time. Please join me in thanking our speakers.